So welcome to the final conversation of Truth and Reconciliation Work Dialogues 2026. I'm your host, Nilima Bhatt, founder of Shakti Leadership. I initiated this campaign, which is now in its 7th year, and we have had a wonderful set of partners along the way. I would like to particularly acknowledge Kristen Engvig and Kiran Reddy for helping get this off the ground back in 2020. Throughout this week, we have explored partition through history, memory, trauma, cosmology, spirituality, heritage, and human consciousness. Today, we close by asking whether the Earth herself might offer us another way of imagining unity, one that existed long before the borders we drew upon her. With me is Douglas Tolchin, a cartographer, ecologist, and systems thinker whose work through Sanctuary Earth explores bioregionalism, ecological regeneration, and new forms of human relationship with the living Earth. He's presenting to us United Bioregions of Bhārata today. Douglas, welcome. It is wonderful to have you with us for this final conversation.
Thank you so much. It's a great pleasure to be here. Thank you.
Douglas, your work brings together cartography, ecology, governance, and a deeply spiritual understanding of the Earth. So would you take us into the journey that brought you here? Was there a particular experience, place, river, landscape, or moment when you began to realize that the political map was telling only part of the story, and that the Earth herself was offering us another map?
Yes, thank you for that question. I would say that were probably two main moments or episodes that sort of propelled me on this, what is now turned into about a 25-year journey in progress. And I expect will go on hopefully for 1,000 years or more, beyond me as well. And I guess maybe the best way, with pictures being worth 1,000 words, to help answer that would be to just share kind of some images with you all while I speak. So, in spring 2001, I had two encounters that were very profound and special out of my whole life. I've encountered many whales and things, but this was unique. And there were two encounters with a whale. It's a long story, but just to make it short, I ended up sort of having one of those epiphany moments we all have occasionally in our lifetime. We never know when that lightning will strike, but sort of a whole portal vision thing opened, and I felt it, and it's been with me very strong ever since. It related to kind of a vision of the whole seashed and watershed in which I live. I'm told that I live in Washington State and British Columbia and USA and Canada, but that all went away, and it was just the watershed, the earth, the water, the air, all the roads, everything sort of went away. It was all about the animals, the plants. And ever since then, I sort of lost, relatively speaking, my interest in business and money and power, which I was kind of on that track very strongly in investment banking and others, really reduced, and my fascination with nature and animals and life went up exponentially. It was just a total paradigm shift in my consciousness. And then I wanted to try and figure out how to share that experience or that view with others. And I feel that the world, with the sixth great extinction underway and the biodiversity crisis, as well as all the other issues, but this epiphany had to do mainly with the animals and the plants and the trees rather than the humans and all their problems. And I wanted to try and find a way to make that visible to others and share with the world. But just to give you the feeling, of the epiphany, and also to really not just say the words nature and say the words animals, but to look them in the eye and to think about them and to put our consciousness on them. I just kind of want to share these images briefly. These are the animals, the animal people, these other beautiful, incredible, magical beings of our bioregion, our area of life. right? Bio, life, region, area. It's very simple and flexible term. Um, and just in all the different forms and credible, and that, they have a right to be here at least as much as us, and maybe more, in that they've been here for 100 million years. We've been here for about 300,000 years, just in terms of the mammals. I started this kind of propelled me to really want to understand and recognize that I really was not taught in school much about water or earth or air or trees or nature or animals or how the system really works. Just very tiny little bit. Taught about a lot of other things, but very little about what at that point seemed to feel like it mattered most to me and has stayed with me for the last 25 years. So I it sort of propelled me into trying to understand about water and how rare and precious it is. That's all the water in the world relative to the earth. The second globe is all the fresh water in the world, most of which is underground. That tiny little dot is all the rivers and lakes of the world. And so, I mean, it's so precious, but we treat it like dirt generally around the world, or our governments with the permits and the industry and, just all the issues. I mean, we should almost have a law, I think, in the world to not put anything into the water that is not water, pure water. I mean, just that should be the standard, pure water everywhere. And in the rivers and creeks for the animals to drink, it needs to be clean there for them as well as us, but mainly, for them. So let's see here. Okay. Anyway, and then just, recognizing, we're mostly made of water ourselves, which is sort of a mirror of the two-thirds of the world covered in water. Just what is the air made of? I didn't totally know. Well, it's 21% oxygen, 78% nitrogen. Now we know. Our body, because water is mostly made of oxygen, our body is two-thirds made of oxygen from the perspective of elements. And I think it's very important, if we don't know what we're made of and how that relates to the world, how can we start to address its issues and opportunities and problems? And then just the timeline of life and perspective. Everything else has been here for hundreds of millions of years, and it took 50 to 100 million years each out of 4 billion years of the planet to evolve this. But we, in 300,000 years, but particularly in the last 1,000 years, have actually destroyed, 95% of biodiversity, contaminated all the water, mainly in the last not even 1% of human history. For 99% of human history, the waters were pure, the animals were abundant, everything was in balance. It's only been this aberration, this tiny last little 1% of human history, where we went out of control. Our population went out of control. It all became about us, and it all became about money and taxes and debt and, everything. We're all preoccupied 99% of the time. And I think we need to get back to putting more than 50% of our attention and time onto nature, I think. That's one of the things I'd like to suggest. It used to be for 99% of human history, it was 99% free living natural animals and 1% humans. 100 years ago, it became these ratios. 17% mammals, 23% humans, 60% farmed animals. So it was the shift to domesticated animals 10,000 years ago that changed everything, and particularly the last 1,000 years. And now it's 62% farmed animals is the biomass of mammals in the world. 34% humans and only 4% all of the elephants and whales and birds, et cetera. And this is like what we've done. So we have to understand what we've done in the time frame. And I think we have to restore the balance to get back to more than 50%. In 1850, it was 50-50, free living mammals and humans and their cows and pigs and chickens. But today it's down to 5% to 95. So we're like way out of balance. And I believe, we all need to, and I believe everyone will agree to restore that balance to more than 50% natural mammals, less than 50% us and our food. This is visually the proportion of humans, cows, pigs, and chickens by mass, volume, weight. And here's all the natural animals in the world. I mean, that's the situation today, the reality. So, and even in birds, 2/3 of all the bird biomass in the world are chickens. 1/3 all the other birds. That's insane, right? So I think we have to recognize and admit, There's an insanity in the current situation, but we're rational, ethical beings, and we can make agreements and redesign and move back within 100 years, we've done most of this transformation. Within 100 years, we could transform it back to whatever we agree. So this is what basically in the Epiphany, kind of all at once, with no words, was the Salish Sea Marine Sanctuary for this whole bioregion become a protected area with elevated standards of conduct. This is where I live here in Bellingham in the middle, Seattle to the south, Vancouver to the north. The US-Canada border goes right through the middle of this. It's all partitioned into counties and cities and stuff, but I don't show that on this map. In the lower left corner, you can see kind of the partitions, but this is actually to show nature with no roads, no man-made boundaries. This is the way it was created millions of years ago by water and the Ice Age and different things. This kind of describes, then we created other tools to try and make this map of the world into a reality of the world through agreements with people. So we have this Salish Sea Bioregional Proclamation by the people that we created that goes with the map. And it's a very critical tool. This is 1 + 1 = 1,000. It's an exponential synergy between the map, the proclamation, and then the animal montages. But it's not just one map. You need a series of maps and bioregional atlas to create a mental mindscape of your bioregion. So you understand it. You have to understand it on a lot of levels before you can make good decisions or plans or designs for it. This is Dr. Jane Goodall, who left the planet recently, with us in the Bioregional Design Studio here in Bellingham. I recommend India to create bioregional learning centers, design studios, and meeting places to evolve and teach us. She came, she endorsed, loved it, and she's a dear friend, departed. These are all the indigenous territories. You talk about partition. This was the map when the colonists arrived in 1491, but to this area more in the 1800s. They didn't get over here till about the 1800s. And the partitioning of this area happened in the mid-1800s with the Oregon Agreement. That's when Oregon, Washington, British Columbia, the British Empire, and America kind of agreed how to chop all these watersheds and indigenous territories up into cities, counties, states, and provinces, and taxation and administrative, which is the role model that 98% of the whole world has adopted, and I believe is the root cause of most of all the imbalances in the world. I believe. There are others, but I believe that these maps, this whole colonial mapping system, and it was the superpower of colonies. Mapping and naming was claiming, and that was the cartographer and the captain were the two most powerful people on the boats. In many ways, the cartographer, because that became the mind maps that every child is, drilled to memorize. And they're not good maps. They were done for the wrong reason, the wrong intention. They're very bad maps all over the world. They're very destructive and not good for country, not good for happiness or health. Whereas watershed maps is the way indigenous people did it for 10,000 years. Our territories from that mountaintop to that, our valley, our river, our watershed. So this was the pre-colonial situation of tribes in our Salish Sea. We need to remember that, recognize it, make it visible. Here are all the river sheds, so the children can learn the shape, the size, the names of every river shed throughout your bioregion. This was the digital elevation model, so you understand it 3D, 2D, not just 2D. Here's the surface water hydrology. Boom, beautiful. We got to make it beautiful and inspiring, not just scientifically accurate. And look at that. It's a gorgeous living. Each one of these colors is a different river shed, a different watershed community. I mean, don't you want to live in one of those? And then here's land ownership. You need to know who supposedly owns the land. Can anyone really own it? But here you can see the federal governments of USA and Canada say they own most of the land in our bioregion, which is both an issue and an opportunity. You can see that the private sector lands are more in the heavily populated areas, shoreline areas. Then there's state and provincial, there's tribal. Well, we need to know who says they own what and control so we can talk with them and negotiate about what is our design, what do we want these lands to be filled with and used for, and how to be taken care of over the next 2 to 10 to 100 and 1,000 years, right? Here shows a map of how much of the land is protected and not protected. So you can see in our area, 28% is under some form of protection, 72% is like for exploitation. Okay, that's our current situation. Well, a lot of places in the world, and you'll see like with India and many other places, the percentages are much lower. Our area is relatively intact. We're still two-thirds in forest in our bioregion, which is quite great. Most places in the world are down to 10 to 20% forest. So we are actually, this Salish and the whole part of the epiphany and vision was that not only is this a bioregion, the one I live in that I need to do, but actually that it is the quintessential original role model nucleus DNA for bioregional watershed communities worldwide. And I believe that what we accomplish and do in this bioregion is going to become like a candle in the darkness of transforming, from this age of empires that morphed into the age of nation states in the last 50 to 200 years into the age of bioregion, which is going to be a very beautiful, hopefully paradisical time, particularly if we can keep the robots and AI under control and helping with nature and put that at the core of their programs. So this just, you got to understand about who lives other than humans in your bioregion, connect with them, look them in the eye. Art is so important to the movements, music, poetry. Then, the journey that you asked about, different people, often clan mothers, chiefs of different tribes, other people would see the Salish Sea maps and ask me to say, we need a watershed map, a bioregion map for our bioregion. So I did for the Missouri Rivershed. These are the animals, the animal montages that go with it. The Maya bioregion for the Mayan people who asked for this map. I did it for Amazonia. Here we are in ceremony in Palenque, proclaiming the bioregion after 4 days. Here's other images and graphics that help get us out of our anthropocentric logjam. This is Mexico, all his watersheds. Here is from the perspective of birds, all the bioregional flyways of birds. Why is it always from human perspective? Even the watersheds, still that's kind of human. The birds go everywhere, and we should know. The ocean is also important, not just terrestrial. Here's the partition of North America on the left. This is mostly all just in the last 100 to 200 years, like a blink in time of human history and the history of life on Earth. But here on the right, this is the natural map of Turtle Island. This is just a reflection of the way nature is and has been for tens of thousands, millions of years. Humans didn't do it. We inherited it. And then we've been like chopping it up. Like it's the difference between like a living animal on the right and an animal on the left that you've chopped up and put on shelves in a supermarket to be sold for money. That's what these colonial maps have done to everybody. It's not that they're not useful in their own way, but it's not beautiful and it's not paradise. And this is the only planet in the world, I'm sorry, in the universe that can support life. It's supposed to be paradise and Eden and Kalani Hanua, heaven on earth. Here's all of the Americas, just re-recognized, remapped, and renamed. It's very important to rename, not perpetuate the colonial mappings and the namings. You have to remap them and rename them and reclaim them for a purpose, which in all of our maps, it's to restore natural animal populations throughout our bioregions to more than 50% of historic levels. This journey led me to map the South American continent and zoom in, the African continent, and go back and find the most beautiful pre-colonial name for it, Alkebulan, mother of mankind. It means something. What does Brazil mean? What does America mean? What does, you know, Africa mean? I mean, they don't even have any meaning, these words. And that was intentional by the colonies, by the empires. They didn't want us to have meaning and love and sense of community. So we have to rename and remap everything to reconnect with nature, the world, and in fact, our own spirit that has been colonized and partitioned, in my opinion. Here's Eurasia. Why is it Eurasia? What happened to Russia? It's half of the whole thing. So you have to honor Russia, not act like they're not there. Eurasia is a name worth putting out to people. Ultimately, everyone can decide what name they want to use. Tawantinsuyu, that's what the Inca civilization and people of this watershed, 4 regions. That's what it means, 4 regions. That was their name pre-colonization, Tawantinsuyu, not Chile, which means nothing. These are events and gatherings that we have to meet and talk. People are doing this all over the world with these maps, proclamations, signing ceremony, kind of like the Declaration of Independence, but better. It's not just trying to separate from an empire and create a less bad system called nation states, but actually to proclaim, that we're at least going to aspire again to co-creating heaven on earth. Like, when did that stop being the goal? Turtle Island Central Flyway, Salmon Haven from the perspective of the salmon, then renaming United Bioregions of Turtle Island, all of North America instead of United States of America just. And it's not to get rid of all the other, these things can operate, they're useful. They can operate and coexist in the same time-space continuum and are going to for a long time. 100 years from now, I would not be surprised if most of the nation states have transformed into bioregions. Here's Ireland, which was always called Éire, is the Celtic name. Much more beautiful, Éire, not Ireland. So if you go to sanctuary.earth website, you can explore this whole portfolio of bioregional maps, by far the largest in world history, more than 100 times more than any others, and we're growing it all the time. We're remapping the whole planet as bioregions and watersheds. So I wanted to contextualize for what we're going to share with Bhārata of the 25 years that has enabled us to have this conversation of Bhārata. And don't forget, the whole planet is a biosphere. The whole planet is a bioregion, right? This is all of ours. So we have to take care of every creek shed, pond shed, lake shed, river shed. But ultimately, together, 8 billion of us, this is our bioregion together, biosphere. There's Sanctuary Earth, the mantra, the yantra. It's all a portal for our consciousness into ourselves and then back out. Everything's a mirror. Art, turning this all into art and imagery. Japan and Switzerland and Hawaii are the only 3 places I know where Hawaiian indigenous people, where they have mapped their administrative districts in alignment with their watersheds. Japan, Swiss cantons, and the Hawaiian Ahupua. Everywhere else in the world has been colonized and chopped up like animals for the supermarket shelves. But here, Japan has done a beautiful, perfect job. And they did this hundreds of years ago. While all the empires were they were not colonized. You see, they have stayed indigenous, the Japanese people, to their territory. They did not get partitioned. They stayed in alignment with their watersheds. Age of nation states, here's a whole history. Age of empires, here's a whole history. Here's the future, the age of bioregions. And we are like at this very, very beginning 1% of this new age, I believe. And it's democracy 3.0 as well. There's a whole new watershed democracy that we need to create that is true democracy, not just this representative fake Republican Democrat. We all know it's kind of not really democracy. So
can I get
that's
into your...
my whole answer to question number 1.
Yeah, it's fascinating. I love how you have set the global picture. And now we can, and one important point, just to, you said the age of nation states is a very recent and, short period of time. It's according to you, just from, the end of the Second World War and everything got parceled into nation states, but hopefully it's not a long-lived age, and we're going to quickly move into the age of bioregions. So that's a very important piece from your first answer. Second, I love the slide where you show the total amount of ocean and sea water this planet has, salt water, and even less the fresh water this planet has. And we tend to think of planet Earth kind of awash in water, but actually it's a really tiny, thin skin. It's not that much water that this planet has. I remember being very struck by that slide of yours. I can see it, but it's okay. Let's not go, but let's go forward. The question I now have is, you've created the vision of United Bioregions of Bhārata, organized not primarily around political boundaries, but around watersheds and living ecological systems. So could you take us into this map and help us see what it reveals about Bhārata that the political map conceals? In particular, what do the rivers, mountains, watersheds, and ecosystems tell us about the deep interconnectedness of a civilization that partition divided.
Great. I'd love to. So here is kind of the typical map, probably when you were in elementary school, they had you maybe memorize these 28 states and 8 union territories of India, that is Bharat, according to the Constitution of India. And these were like in most all of the world that got colonized and empired. Uh, it was divided mainly along ethno-linguistic lines. Um, and that has its issues and opportunities with it, but they are not at all the same as watershed or natural boundaries. So this is a map of India, not with the man-made lines, whoever put them there hundreds of years ago for their various motives. Here's just India as surface water hydrology. Now, this is not just India. This includes Bhutan and Nepal and Pakistan and Myanmar and Bangladesh. But India is the biggest piece of all of this. So if you just look at it like that, it's so beautiful, isn't it? And it's a mirror of us. It's like our circulatory system in our body, and this helps reconnect us. Here you can see it, a little more three-dimensionally, and then the connection to the Himalayas and the water above. Here's kind of a logo. This is all a concept, by the way. I mean, this is all to stimulate dialogue. Maybe everyone wants the name of this bioregion to be something different. But for now, just so we don't call it India, 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 which, that's, everyone knows that, to at least try and come up with another name. So Bharata or Bharat is in many ways, anyways, the main one that I found that seemed to make sense when I wanted to make a map as a gift for Amma, who I had met here in Seattle, the hugging saint. So here it is as United Bioregions of Bhārata. Here it is. Here's a map showing all those administrative districts relative to the surface water hydrology. And sometime if you can zoom in and stuff, you'll see that it just chops up all the watersheds, which leads to the tragedy that commons. Because people aren't caring for a river or a creek as a community. They're like, I'm going to take the water out here. If I don't, someone else will. And then everyone is just greedy and takes it and uses it and dumps stuff in it to who's downstream because that's a different territory. That's a different state. It's their problem now. So this is a lot of the problems. So we have to get back to the beauty of the gift of the world that was given to us and take care of it like your child is a gift, a dog. Think about how much care we put into taking care of our child or our dog. We should treat the earth, water, and air at least as nicely as we treat our dog, I would think. Here are the main rivers and the main river names. If you don't know the names of the main rivers and where they are and their shape and size, you can't even start to be a bioregioneer, bioregional planner, inhabitant, to even recognize yourself as a true inhabitant of the bioregion. You have to have literacy and understand the shape and size of the water, the air, the earth, and who are the animals you share it with. So here is the nation state partitioning of this big macro watershed, which in the upper left corner, by the way, includes the Indus River Valley, which is like the first civilization on the whole planet before Egypt, Greek, Rome, before any of the other empires. I mean, this is like the original origin of civilization on all of Earth. And it has all the Vedic sciences and a lot of wisdom about vegetarian leaning dietary practices that the world needs to learn a lot more about. In the same way that yoga and meditation has moved from India and benefited the world, I would really love to see the vegetarian recipes and ethos and spiritual rationales come out from India to the world. It would really help a lot. It could be very profound for the world. So, here are the different nation states, and they have their own cultures, and they don't want to be colonized in the name of bioregionalism either. So we have to be careful. Bharata it might be something people in India like, but maybe the people in Bhutan, Pakistan feel it's too much like India. They want a name for the bigger, broader bioregion, the complete bioregion that, doesn't feel colonizing to them through the bioregional portal. So there are other names out there, and I would ask everyone to think about what they are and have conversations. But for now, as a placeholder, let's use United Bioregions of Bhārata and certainly have it on the table as an option, or at least for the India portion of the bioregion, right? These bioregions within bioregions within bioregions, they can overlap. And so you could have both. You could have the India portion be United Bioregions of Bhārata, and then the totality could be, uh, United Bioregions of Jambudvipa, right? Um, which has a whole interesting story. Here's the mother's spiritual map of India that you gave to me, Nailima, and you can see it very closely reflects the totality of the whole bioregion. So she somehow kind of saw this with the technology they had decades ago, or spiritually and or otherwise, um, that this was more like the totality of the, in her words, I guess, spiritual community, in my mindset, watershed community. But I think watersheds are very spiritual. There are those administrative districts again with a blue background where all the waters are blue and not even colonized by colors of rainbow, just all one water system, like our circulatory system. And there it is, just all as one. So colors are so important in all of this in the communication. There it is as white to hit the brain a different way. There's the mother with her maps at that playground that's very famous, I understand, and her long-term vision and hope for it. Here's, Jambudvipa as a concept, a bioregional oceanic protector for that, which if we surveyed and spoke with the people in Bhutan and Myanmar and so forth, they might prefer that as the overarching bioregional umbrella that they can resonate with and get inspired and feel that they're a equal inhabitant citizen along with people of India bioculturally. This is very important. I didn't get it. We haven't had a chance to map them yet, but one of the things you have to really map is your land use. So you can see that India, according to this, let's assume it's all accurate, is about 24% in forest, which is not so great. You really need at least 33% in forest just for basic hydrological functions. And by the way, that is the stated goal of the India nation state, is to get from 24 to 33%. But if you want to really have a healthy ecology with animals and really good water and everything, you really need more like what we have, at least 2/3 forest. That's just sort of the math and the science of it. India is doing better than a lot of places in the world have only 10, 15% forest left or less. Everything, the cedars of Lebanon, they're all gone. It's all desert now, right? So a lot of desertification has happened in the world. There used to be forests everywhere. They cut them down, it all turned to deserts. Put the forest back, the rivers come back, the creeks come back, the animals, the life, the food all comes back. And humans have the unique ability to do this as gardeners. So you can see urban, suburban, 52% of India is in agriculture. That's very high. But it's actually only somewhat higher, than the world average, which is around 40%. So that's what we've done. As a global species, we have colonized and partitioned for the best 40%, the most food productive land, 40% on the planet, almost exclusively for human purposes. And any animals come around, elephants want to come and eat some of it, or we kill them. You know, that's what happened. That's the history of it. That's why 96% of them are gone at the moment. But like Noah's Ark, as long as you have two or more of everything, you can replenish the earth. It's amazing how quickly nature can come back, and there are great success stories with humpback whales and whales in general, bison that have had hundredfold increases in 50 years and tenfold increases in 50 years since humans agreed that they were a priority. So here's protected versus exploited areas. You can see India is 75% exploited, about 20% forest, and only 5% is strictly protected. Now, India, along with all the other nations in the world, except for the USA, Russia, and four other little nations you barely heard of, have agreed to put under protection, protected status, identify and place under protected status 30% of all land and all ocean in their exclusive economic zones under protected area status by 2030, only 4 years from now. So India has made a commitment to go from 5% protected to 30% protected in the next 4 years, and most of the world. So this is very hopeful. And this shows that even nation states are not all bad colonization. They have woken up. In fact, I think our mapping and our mantra and yantra actually contributed to this agreement amongst the nation states in Montreal 4 years ago at the United Nations Convention of the Parties on Biodiversity. And they all agreed, like, we need to set aside 30% of the land and 30% of the oceans for nature by 2030. And in the background, there's already a consensus agreement that by 2050, everyone, all the nation states, the bioregions, everyone throughout the world should consider talking about and agreeing to put into protected area status more than 50% of all the land, more than 50% of all the oceans by 2050. And we can do this. It's all, whatever we agree, we're all powerful. We can do this. And we can make plenty of food for all the humans, better food, healthier, more organic, more plant-based, more healthy, more happy. Everyone wins. Better for humans, better for animals, better for everything, and better for our spirits. Agricultural, you got to know what's going on with your 40% of the land. Fortunately, I was happy to see that you're not overrun totally with genetically engineered soybean and corn like the United States is. We're just devastated with GA, it should all be illegal. It's insane. Japan, it's illegal. Russia, it's illegal. Europe, it's illegal. But in the US, Canada, and India, genetic engineering is somehow legal and everyone's getting poisoned by it. It should just be illegal everywhere. Like, get rid of it. But fortunately, most of your crops are actually in the not genetically engineered area, although I need to investigate a little more. But you should think about, but if you notice, your fruits and vegetables only 9% of your land. So anyway, agriculture and understanding it, mapping it, planning it, really important. I was also happy to see you're not exporting too much of your food, which is a way of exporting your topsoil to the world as food. You don't want to export your topsoil. It's very thin. It's very precious. You got to, Vandana Shiva style, you got to build up your topsoil, not deplete it or export it, which the U.S. does. It's crazy. So, your soy and corn are, a little smaller. So that's good. So anyway, I'm just trying to show you that we need to look at these things in ways that they never taught us in school to look at. The governments never talked to us about any of this. The media never talks to us about any of this. We have to do it among ourselves as people and self-educate and create our own movements. It has to come from the people. We should not wait for the nation states to do this. And that's why the bioregions. So this is the 30 by 30 commitment. You can see almost everyone did, the US agreed to it through President Biden, his first day in office, executive order. President Trump, in his first month, took the US out of it. Well, we need to bioregionalize and get America back into it, in my opinion. But better yet than even following the nation state lead is just do it as bioregions. We don't have to do it through we do it in cooperation with the nation states, but we, the bioregions, we, the people, should actually be getting in front of this and leading it, holding it, and defining what does protected mean, because the implementation is critical. By the way, did you all know that the Indian Ocean Whale Sanctuary, all of this area here is all a protected area for whales, baleen whales, toothed whales. And this was established in 1979, but I'll bet you 98% of the people in India don't even know this is all a whale sanctuary, called the Indian Whale Sanctuary. So that's already there. It shows the incredible, and ever since that agreement went in place, the whales have come back. They were almost all extinct and wiped out to nothing. And now they're back up to 20, 30% of historic levels. We need to work more to get them up to 50%. But this is an incredible success story, the whale sanctuaries of the world, which were put into place without the involvement or knowledge of the people in the 70s and 80s. So that's the long answer to question number 2.
Wow, fascinating. The borders created by partition cut through communities, cultures, families, and even ecosystems. Yet rivers continued to flow, watersheds continued to connect, and the earth itself refused to recognize those boundaries. Have you encountered a particular place or ecological system where you could actually see or feel that political separation and ecological reality were in conflict? And what did that teach you about the possibility of healing partition?
Thank you for that question. And the answer is yes, I grew up in it all my life. And I have lived and traveled. I grew up on the East Coast. I've lived 30 years on the West Coast. I've traveled around much of North America, Central America, South America, and everywhere I go, it's all been partitioned. And the results of those partitions, the colonization, particularly if you get into studying what happened to the indigenous people and, the genocide and the partitioning, the colonization, the reservations, the I mean, it's absolutely one of the great crimes of the time of humanity. But here we are. Um, and here's our current situation. And hey, look, it's one of the nice things, thank you to the nation states for not blowing us all up with nuclear bombs, which they could have, and they didn't. So thank you for that. Thank you for all agreeing on repairing the ozone by stopping using hydrofluorocarbons. So the nation states do a lot of good things. I'm not trying to totally say they're evil or they're not. But they're a very mixed bag. Um, they and their empire predecessors, did a lot of bad things a long time ago. They're doing a lot better nowadays, but you know, being less bad is not the same as being, good or great or paradise. So if we want to get back to great and paradise, I think we must remap, rename, and reclaim the world as uh, watersheds and with an agreed central vision statement like this one here to restore the natural animal populations throughout all of our bioregions worldwide to more than 50% of historic levels as soon as possible. I believe that if everyone in the world, and I know from having surveyed thousands of people in the world, that way over 99% of everyone who reads this in the form of a question or you could vote on it, they say yes. This is what they want. This is what more than 99% of everyone wants. By any size, shape, religion, Republican, Democrat type of person, everyone agrees on this one thing. And it's about love, not fear. It's that we all love animals. We love nature. We at least think to it, at least the idea of it. And love is the great power. Love, my mother told me, love and money are the two great powers in the world. But of the two, love is the greater. But fear is not. Fear is a short-term motivator and gets you to outcomes you don't like. We must go to love. And the path to love is through an unconditional love. The best form is through the animals and the trees and the nature and the water. So that's where we get into more spiritual. So that all of the Americas, this is on the move, by the way. There's a Turtle Island Bioregional Congress coming up in September in Oregon. 300 leaders are coming together. I recommend in India that you convene bioregional congresses and meet and get to know each other. People are camping out together 5 days, putting our cell phones away and getting to know each other's people and talking about how do we accelerate this transition to the age of bioregions. Of course, in a very peaceful, democratic, beautiful, harmonious way. This is an evolution, not a revolution. So there.
You speak about watershed consciousness and watershed democracy, the possibility of organizing human cooperation around the living systems we share. So what happens to our sense of identity when we begin to see ourselves not simply as citizens of a nation, but as members and custodians of a watershed? Could shared ecological responsibility become a new basis for cooperation between communities that have historically been divided?
Well, that's a one hour question there, but it's the answer at this point is kind of theoretical because I have searched the world and I haven't found anyone who's really done it yet. So right now it's kind of an idea, sort of like the Declaration of Independence was an idea that has been gone around the world, I think. But I believe we have to create it. We're working here in the Salish Sea. We're actually getting ready to we've been in R&D prototyping. We're actually getting ready to launch what I believe is Earth's first bioregional inhabitant self-recognition, registration, survey, and voting system. So for the first time in the world on any significant scale that I am aware of, I believe you will see that we will be the first group of people within a watershed where we'll be invited and enabled to vote on things that have to do with like water and air and food and topsoil and animals and trees and things that affect all of those things. And if you notice, I've surveyed hundreds of people on this question. I've asked, have you ever been invited by your nation to vote on any of these things? And the answer is like always no. How is it that we are told we live in a democracy, but we never get to vote on anything having to do with the earth, water, air, food, animals, trees, and plants? It's absolutely insane. And we don't even question it. And not only should we question it, we should be outraged that we don't get to vote on those things, at least in terms of broad policy. Why do we have people 3,000 miles away making these decisions on our behalf? We don't know why they're making and we get to beg and petition? No, we the people, that's the top of the US Constitution. There's nothing above that. The role model for two-thirds of the governments in the world. We are the ones who are supposed to be in the power at the top. And the public servants are below to serve the will of the people. That's what they're supposed to do, but they've flipped it. They're now in charge, and we have to beg and petition to them. So we have to flip it back again, where we, the people, do proclamations by the people, but not nation state proclamations, bioregional proclamations by the people. Now, no one's ever done it before. That's why part of why it's going to work. Also, because it's the right thing to do. It's ethical. It's such common sense. It's like so obvious once you know it. Sort of like slavery is bad. It's kind of obvious once the cultures realize it. It's like now it's like taken for granted. So this is what I think is so important because, money comes and goes, debt, that's that world, of people and fear and so forth. But food, the quality of the water in our body, the food, one of your other speakers was really talking about how food and water is the thing that unites us with ourselves in a good way and with each other and our families. I mean, we got to get the food and water to be free of chemicals and genetic engineering. And right now, 90 some odd percent of all the food is terribly contaminated. Same with the water. We're so afraid of the water. We buy it in bottles for more than the price of gasoline. It's totally insane.
Yeah.
And technologically, it doesn't need to be that way. We can change this all like dramatically within 10 years. But we have to agree and we have to articulate what do we want. That's true democracy. What do you want? Express it. And then government should serve the will of the people. What do they want? But they need to find a way to express it. And the media is not going to help you express it. The government's not going to let you vote on it. What, once every 4 years? We should be able to vote on these things every month, every week, every day, through surveys, through votes, through communication, through consensus, through talking circles, listening circles, through myriad means. We need to build a whole new democracy that is truly grassroots, truly bioregional, steeped in watershed consciousness for the benefit of all life, not just for humans.
I feel like asking you to get on a plane and come to Pondicherry because earlier this year in January, we launched the Regenerate Pondi movement. And it is exactly what you're describing, which is how do we regenerate our bioregion with a 100-year window, plan, and starting with getting food security and water security, and then managing our waste cycle in a regenerative way. So if we figured if we can work on these three things, food, water, waste, we will begin the hard journey of building and the eco-cathedral of the bioregion. It won't happen in your lifetime, but hopefully in 3 generations, like a cathedral, these things can see a turnaround. So it's very exciting here you say these things because we have on the call some of the people from our Regenerate Pondi convening team, and I hope we have time for some Q&A with them. Next question is, much of reconciliation work begins with human relationships. Your work suggests that we might also begin with our relationship to the earth. Can restoring a river, forest, watershed, or damaged landscape actually help restore relationships between human communities? Have you witnessed an example where ecological regeneration brought people together in a way that conventional dialogue could not?
Well, they're far and few between, and not many here in the Americas yet. So I haven't with my own eyes really seen any of them. I have seen some of them or aspects of them through videos and research. Interestingly, I have found in my research that India actually has, in some ways, more of these examples than most anywhere else. You have Oroville, which is a very interesting restorative wasteland, balanced forest, beautiful community uh, in a voluntary, people-driven way. You have Rajendra Singh, the waterman of India, and all the watershed restorations, rivers that had gone dry and extinct being brought back to life with reforestation and so forth. There have been, mainly what you see is you have the Green Belt movement in Kenya by Wangari Maathai, the Nobel Prize winner who's passed away now, inspired by her largely. Apparently, women inspire a lot of these movements. Interesting, Vandana Shiva of India and her whole educations and inspirations, and what is it, Navdanya? Uh, concept of regenerating topsoil and food and systems and seed sovereignty and food sovereignty, very important. Seed sovereignty, chemical free, and so forth. So she's, of course, an amazing. Um, Colombia has some examples. The Los Plateau is more of a nation state ordered thing by China, but that benefited millions and millions of people that had, been dispossessed by the devastation of the land. And now it's green and has food and, they have a nice life. They probably don't have a whole lot of money, but they have clean water to drink and food and nature and each other, and life's good. You don't necessarily need much money if you have good food, water, and, friends and family and some land and clean air to breathe. That's like the basics. So, I think it's very early. Mostly, humans have been mainly exploiting lots of the world, preserving some of it through the national park systems, the national marine sanctuaries. A lot of individual private owners have done some have done a decent to good or wonderful job of restoration. Ted Turner was a billionaire who did incredible restorations on large scale. There's a great example, and I've been to his place. That's actually one I've seen. The Ted Turner large scale ecosystem restoration, the bison coming back, the antelope around parts of the US, that is an incredible one. And that's where I think there's a huge role for philanthropy in all this. The billionaires of the world, they need to spiritualize their money. And under the US tax system, everything above 12 million, they need to give it away, or the governments are going to take 40 to 50% of it in taxes, which they don't want to do. But right now, only 3% of all philanthropy in the US, the biggest in the world, goes to nature and animals. 97% goes to human causes. It's once again insane. It should probably be the opposite, but at a minimum, shifting more than 50% of philanthropy to the benefit of nature and animals and restoration, there's a paradigm shift that could really accelerate the transition into the age of bioregions. Because money is very powerful as well. And you combine that money and the love that we all have for nature and animals and embrace the billionaires. Don't demonize them. Embrace them, invite them, thank them, for helping with all this. A lot of them do very anonymously. Most of them have pledged to give most of their money away while they're alive and not even wait till they're dead through the Warren Buffett pledge and so forth. You should embrace them, talk to them, invite them to the bioregionals, bioregionalize their consciousness. They'll be into it and it'll be very helpful. You want them to work with us.
Douglas, I love, you hold such a planetary consciousness and you break it down and make it so simple and you make it sound so possible because you bring it down to first principles of love and hope and possibility that it's possible in a couple of generations, if not just this generation. We're kind of coming to the last few questions I have for you before we can open it for the audience. You speak of a possible transition from the age of nation states to the age of bioregions. What would that actually mean for the way we live with regard to governance, economy, culture, migration, and our relationship with one another? And what would have to change in human consciousness for us to make that transition?
Yeah, I think it's The answer to that is an extension of what I was talking about before. I just think, people need, broadly speaking, the people need to become very knowledgeable and wise and participating in the decisions relating to the water, the topsoil, the animals, the plants, the trees of their pond shed, their lake shed, their river shed. Simple is the most important thing we need. Everyone, human and non-human animals alike, need plentiful, pure water to drink. That should be like goal number one. Just everyone should have like unlimited, abundant, pure water to drink for free without plastic bottles. Get rid of all the plastic bottles. Figure out a better system. And it should be free, like a human right, a collective. It's not free. Someone has to say we collectively can pay for that, like the roads, or something. Just pure water for everyone to drink, not just the humans, the animals too, in the rivers, the creeks. That's why the surface waters need to be pristine. They're not sewers. They're sacred water bodies. And we need to treat them as such. So the water is the first thing to start with, absolutely critical. And then it's just, and it's agreements. Restore the balance that, human beings and our food animals and companion animals should be less than 50% of all the biomass of mammals and birds on this planet. I mean, 99% of all the humans I've surveyed, way more than 99%, agree that that's the case. Well, why is it 95 to 5 the other way? So there's a huge overarching moonshot agreement that we need to facilitate those surveys through the people because the government and the media is not going to do it. Once again, don't wait for them. They'll follow, but they're not going to lead it. And so this is it, and then we end up with a world, I remember as a child, the skies were filled with birds. There were fireflies filling the air. There were ladybugs landing on me. There were bumblebees and butterflies all over the place. They're 99% gone. That was heaven. That was heaven on earth. And I saw it as a small child. It's mostly been wiped out during my lifetime, your lifetime.
Yeah,
And
this
we
is
can
Douglas.
restore it all.
Yeah, Douglas, I feel such heartbreak around this, when I see the accusation in my daughter's eyes, she looks at me and my generation and she's right that, we tanked the planet on our beat. It happened in our lifetime while we were busy chasing other goals, selfish goals.
This is true.
It's incredible how in one lifetime, one generation, we can destroy millennia upon millennia of evolution. It's
Hundreds of
it,
millions of years
yeah, it
of
boggles my
evolution.
mind. It really boggles my
We're
mind.
incredibly selfish, and we need to
Yes,
admit that. And
yes,
self-centered, anthropocentric, insanely. And it's like an alcoholic. If you want to stop being an alcoholic, the first thing you have to do is admit that you're an alcoholic and you don't want to be an alcoholic anymore. It's kind of like that. We don't want to be genocidal. It's not just Native Americans and, you know, humans genociding humans. It's the genocide of all life on Earth that we have done, and that's the current situation.
some
But
point
it'll
of
all come
well,
back very quickly.
I would like you to therefore take us the final question to a place of hope. We spent
Okay.
this entire Truth and Reconciliation week asking how we heal the partitions we have inherited. So perhaps this is a fitting question with which to close. If you could draw a new map for the future, not a map of borders, but a map of belonging, what would it look like? And what would you hope the generations after us would see when they look at it?
Well, I'm working on that map, uh, and you know, this is a very overly simplistic version of it, but basically, I believe, this is, kind of one of the main purposes and goals of Sanctuary Earth is, and I invite everyone else to do it in their own way, and let's all brainstorm it. But I believe that collectively, we want to remap and rename and reclaim all of the Earth. If it's in physical form as an illuminated globe, three-dimensionally, would be great, to make. Having two-dimensional analog versions for the screen world. Ultimately, there would be interactive, web-based, infinitely interactive versions. But if you're talking about one static map, physical kind of map, well, I think we have to re-enchant the world by making it a world of watersheds and make this map as beautiful and exquisite as possible. And then we need to have names on everything that inspire and speak to the whole, and that names that mean something, and have stories, and have songs and poems and dances. Like the Bharata dance that you shared with me is,
Bharatanatyam.
I mean, when you have a
Bhava
dance like
Raga
that by
Tala.
women all over the country for decades, I mean, that you make the movement move. And this should be a joy. Life should be a joy. It's so
Douglas,
abundant. There's no
love
limit.
you. Love you,
So that's
love
the
you,
map.
Douglas. So, um, take, this thing of Bharata, Bhava Raga Tala, right? Saying that we built this mythology or this idea into our culture. And, so here is a psycho-spiritual culture that therefore then brings it into dance form, art form, and so on, right? And that represents and expresses the land itself, the people, the sense of nationhood, how you kind of put it all together. So I'm reminded of Joseph Campbell, one great teacher for me, I don't know if you have been inspired by him, the language you just used, but he studied cultures from all around the world, and that were special to those people, kind of confined to certain geographies. And then he says the future of mythology, the future myth has to be a planetary one. We're done with the age of local mythologies. And if humanity has to survive as a species on this planet, it needs to find a planetary myth where our sense of self and who we are, the myth that energizes our life and gives meaning to us, is seeing ourselves as planetary citizens, and everything you just said was as if you are channeling your inner Joseph Campbell. So I wanted to, send out a huge thank you to this wonderful teacher who maybe we need to revisit. And maybe you and I need to start a conversation on this.
Important.
Huh?
The Myths We Live By, right, was, I think, the name of his book that I read as a child. And they're incredibly important.
Yeah.
And life on Earth should be mythical and of mythical proportions.
Yeah.
Why
and
not?
that sense of magic, right? That sense of magic and curiosity and creativity and wonder and a sense of joy of what you belong to and what you inhabit. What is the myth that you inhabit that is life-serving, right? So opening to questions, please type in and we can even have a conversation. Feel free, friends, to unmute and come on video. We can have a few minutes of conversation. Uma is asking, thank you, Douglas. The mother in Pondicherry has given the spiritual map of India to us. You have given us a deeper connection to United Bioregions of Bhārata. It is deeply intriguing and seems possible through the pathway of ecology and love. So that's a comment from Uma. Uma, do come on camera, and Joy, Lalit, do join us on camera. We'd love to have a few minutes of conversation.
Hello.
Hi. I live in Oroville, so it was very happy moment for me to hear you. First example was Oroville for you. Yes. I love the whole conversation. It has such charge and power of future. Something must shift.
Hi, Lalit. Welcome. You're on mute.
Mhm.
Well done, lot to think about. Let me just digest all I heard. Thank you.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Lalit is the founder of Orodhan Art Gallery. It's more of a movement for bringing creativity and art to Pondicherry almost on a daily basis. Incredible, the kind of, in fact, he joined us late because he was having another fabulous performance at his gallery.
Beautiful.
Yeah, so, and he's one of our core team members on the Regenerate Pondi movement that we started. And I think Joy is on the call as well. Joy, could you please comment, join us? I'm sure you have some intriguing thoughts. Joy?
Hi, Nilima and Douglas. Thanks for this really amazing. As Lalit said, I'm also trying to digest it, particularly the variety of amazing and aesthetically designed cartographic works there. So you might be aware, Douglas, out here, Oroville particularly have been carrying this bioregional concept for a long time. So as long as I know Oroville, more than 30 years, 35 years at least.
Great.
And they take a more bottom-up approach to the concept. They make it a much more, let's say, fuzzy, flexible notion. Oroville can have a bioregion, Pondicherry can have its own definition, boundaries of bioregion, etc. And these are not necessarily based on politics per se, but a much more complex interaction of all these different dimensions, which you alluded to. Some of your maps showed the flyways for migratory birds. Some maps showed cultural dimensions to a bioregion, though you concentrated a lot more on these watershed boundaries, which are relatively easier to map compared to many of these other partially tangible and some completely intangible dimensions. So in Oroville, from whom I've learned a lot over my young age, they tend to take this more complex approach of not trying to redefine a static bioregion. So we, in Oroville, for example, they call something a Kaluveli bioregion, which barely touches Pondicherry, even though we are just neighbors. Pondicherry tries to take a much all-encompassing sub-regions, including Oroville bioregion and what other groups in this surrounding areas might call their appropriate regions of interest. And then there are aspects. So when you go into this steep watershed areas, the examples you gave of Japan, Switzerland, Hawaii, and as a cartographer, you know that they have different kind of terrain landscape, which lends themselves easier to a watershed form of administrative boundary making. Flat spaces, which Pondicherry, Oroville tend to be, wouldn't have that kind of a luxury. Here, your water depends on coastal dynamics. The whole hydrology is not just surface hydrology anymore. The proximity to the coast, the spring shed, what we try to use the term that we are more comfortable with instead of watershed, is how the subsurface waters flow.
Right.
And of course, you know all this very well as a cartographer. So that's a tiny example of how not focusing so much on the watersheds, or that might be like the 101 of this bioregional thinking, how to go beyond those, because they can misdirect. There are kinships, there are cultural ties, which change from location to location, latitude, longitude, etc. So we are trying to grapple with this conceptual framework of bioregions also from that perspective. And we are, as I said, this is a more bottom-up perspective. And you have given us this larger top-down perspective, which is great. But the challenge I feel is somewhere at this lower or higher scales, where we get yourself dirty and have to figure out the messiness of the social, cultural, and political, and ecological, and watershed dynamics, etc. So, and I wouldn't doubt that you have faced this questions many times before, because, or maybe you haven't. But could you answer a bit to what I'm alluding to? That the fact that this static form of bioregional definitions, relatively static form, versus something that is from the bottom up, can be extremely subjective and extremely fuzzy, and can change based on groundwater, based on fisher interest, based on coastal sediment dynamics, and which are all changing because of climate change as well, and very rapidly in our short, in the last year, the last couple of years, etc. So yeah, I'll stop there.
Yeah, thank you for that, Joy. I totally agree, and you're very correct. The emphasis during this presentation, and in fact throughout much of our work on surface water hydrology, is sort of the 101 entry level to it. But then there are so many layers, infinite number of layers, really. Nature in some ways is very simple if you just say earth, water, air, plants, animals, but there's millions and billions of levels of detail and interactions and multivariables in it that is wonderful to enjoy and explore when people have the time and interest to do it. I think your issue that you brought up about flat areas as opposed to more hilly and mountainous areas where watersheds and valleys are very obvious, from ridgeline to shoreline to reef, is a very kind of common sense, but still not much done thing in the nation states. But the other predominant way that bioregional thinkers and philosophers tend to look at these things is through the second main way, is through vegetation type. So you can have very vast flat areas, and some of it can be perennial grass prairies, some of it could be desert ecosystems, some of it could be planted as forests, even though it's flat, different types of forests, coniferous forests, deciduous forests, and each of those can be bioregions on a flat piece of land. So, and bioregions just have this incredibly cool way of being able to exist simultaneously in like parallel dimensions that really just shift between these dimensions through sort of your third eye. Are you looking at it through watershed consciousness? Are you looking at it through vegetation type, through grassland type, through tree types? And different bioregional people gravitate to different ones. Some people like to look at bioregions through the viewpoint of whales and their migration, breeding, and feeding areas. Some like to do it through different species of animals. The Asian elephant, their bioregion. How's it doing? What does it look like? What's its shape and size? What did it used to be 1,000 years ago? How many did you have then? How many now? So, doing bioregional, bioregions from the viewpoint of these different species or animals, or even individuals, like Migaloo, the white humpback whale, that is so famous and loved throughout Australia and Southeast Asia. Now Migaloo Jr., the junior white whale. I mean, it's incredibly inspiring. What is Migaloo's bioregion, right? The birds' bioregions. So it's a whole nother world that has largely been rendered invisible by our media and governments, but is totally available to everyone through the infinity of the internet and YouTube and AI. I mean, we're actually at the perfect time in human history with the technology to create this transition to the age of bioregions, kind of like the Gutenberg press, being able to not have to hand copy everything. That's what made the common sense pamphlet that sparked the American Revolution possible. It was the most widely read document of the 18th century in the colonies, and said like, hey, let's get out of the British Empire and start this new thing called American style representative democracy and give it a try. It was like an experiment. It's not perfect, but it was less bad. It was, it's good, but it's like just the next step. But now we have the internet, we have AI, we have emails. We have all these incredible tools. We have cartography, ArcGIS, LiDAR based. And we're just so much smarter, and we can all self-educate. We don't need to go to university for this. We can do this at home for free, $100 a month. And it's going to be a great adventure. And what would be more interesting to think about and talk about with friends than nature and trees and animals and gardening and food? And what, I mean, it's like the most fascinating from all these perspectives, all the different kinds of bioregions. Our body is a bioregion from the perspective of the 80% of our cells that are non-human, right? All the bacteria that live in, on, and all around us. From their perspective, like, don't always do it from big mammals and birds. What about from the plankton's perspective? That, by the way, are down to less than 50% of historic levels, and we get more than 50% of our oxygen. How are the plankton doing? The zooplankton. How about the microbiome in our gut and our body that provides 80% of our immune system? What about this bioregion? And, each of us is our own bioregion. It's quite amazing.
Douglas, you are such a joy to listen to. Your energy and enthusiasm is infectious, and I hope it can transfer to many, many, many people, because we need to wake up many people with this incredible knowledge and passion that you carry. And for me, the takeaway today is, on one hand, we have the spiritual map of India, which is that every nation is a soul, and each soul has a body. And so the mother's map of India shows the body of the soul of India. And then on the other side, it's like two sides of a coin. You have shown us today that the political map of India is not just a political boundary, but there's also India as a bioregion with her watersheds. And of course, in the Indic system, our rivers and mountains are considered beings. They're considered beings who have, I think, there are rivers around the world who are now given the status of someone with rights, right? So in the same way, in the ancient Indic system, our mountains, our rivers are revered beings. And so, what you're bringing us back to is kind of a remembering the past, to move towards a more integral future where, the body of India, Bharata, and the soul of Bharata can truly reconnect with each other through this idea of bioregions and the United Bioregions of Bharat. So this is a thought I have, where the political map of India is more like a sandwich between the spiritual map of India and the bioregional map of India. And if those outer two come together, then there's hope for the political map to shift and change and adapt itself to a more truer version of what is the soulful map. All right. We also had the opening session of TRW this year, which was on the Aeon Center of Cosmology, Aditya, showing us the sign of Capricorn and how that maps exactly onto the map of India. So it's fascinating how all these things seem to be converging from a cosmological lens, from a bioregional lens, from a spirituality lens. Everything seems to be converging to a possibility of a newer, higher integration. And as Joy was also saying, it's many, many layered from top down to bottom up. But hopefully this week has revealed some of these different doorways into finding that integral ground where it can all perhaps fall into place, starting with each one of us who join these calls, but then through us into something more collective that can have a momentum towards this kind of a unified version of looking at ourselves and our partitioned nations. So Douglas, perhaps the most powerful map is not the one that tells us where we end and another begins, but the one that reveals what has always connected us. As we close Truth and Reconciliation Week 2026, may we remember that rivers flow across our borders, The earth holds all our histories, and perhaps our future lies in learning to belong to the whole. Thank you for bringing us home to the living earth.
Thank you so much.
On that note, a very, very warm appreciation to you, Douglas. You've been absolutely amazing. I know how hard you have worked since we met in Japan. And I asked you to do this podcast. And I know since then it's been brewing inside you, and you've put together a real class act. May this presentation be seen by many. And may this be just the beginning of more work. I invite you to Pondicherry. I'm sure Uma invites you to Auroville. And let's begin. Let's begin. Let's see what's possible from here. Okay.
Let's do it. And thank you so much. It's really been a delight, Nilima, since I met you in Japan. I don't know, was it just 1 month ago? And actually this whole journey, to really connect, I've never been to India physically, but just to mentally reconnect with India, beyond yoga and meditation and Ayurveda, which I was quite an enthusiast in the past. But actually, I really now see, I've been studying and mapping much of the world. I actually see what I've heard you and some others talk about, that, India has some great destiny to actually lead the world and show the world, kind of some of the way, or illuminate into the future. And I think, in your Vedic sciences, the food, the ethos, the spirituality, there's so many I think many of the codes that can help elevate bioregioning to its highest levels and accelerate it and in its most beautiful way. I think many of those codes are in India, actually. Everyone has different codes. Japan has certain, we all have pieces of the puzzle. But I think India, not only being, 20% of the world's population, but just, I don't know, the history, the science, the seeking mentality, the curiosity, the spirituality, transcending religion. I just think it has so much to offer the world. So I'm really grateful to have had this talk to get me to focus, to start my journey of understanding and remembering and learning. From, I think India has so much to teach me and everyone else. There's a lot inside of your heads we all need to know, I think.
Thank you. Thank you, Douglas. Well said. That's a beautiful closing comment. So thank you so much. And I'll sign us out on behalf of Truth and Reconciliation Week 2026. I want to also give a big shout out to my executive assistant, Nivedita. She's really worked so hard behind the scenes. Nivedita, do you want to come on and just show yourself? You've been so amazing. And I think she's just sending hearts and kisses. There, here she is.
Yes.
Nivedita,
Sure.
well
Hello.
done.
Nice
well
to meet
done.
you, everyone. Thank you. Thanks, Nilima. It was nice to be part of this Truth and Reconciliation Week. It's the first TRW for me, but it's an amazing experience. I loved it all and loved working for this. Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks to Nilima for this. Beautiful, beautiful, Douglas. Thank you for the insights.
Thank you.
And I'm so glad to see the people who joined today. All my favorite people. We have Uma and Lalit and Joy, and these are the people who are going to help take it forward in Pondicherry. So maybe Mother has plans. And Nivedita is not too far away in Chennai. So
Yes.
it's been so beautiful. I would say this was our 7th Truth and Reconciliation Week. We've never stopped. Every year on the Guru Purnima, we've done it through all hardships and challenges in our personal lives. It's not stopped. And I truly believe this was the best so far. The kind of speakers who showed up for this week are the world's best at what they do. And it's kind of blown my mind. And even though it's extremely, it takes a lot to hold these very, very difficult energies and archetypes that are held in the idea of partition and the reality of partition. There's so much history. And when you take on such a subject, that energy, that conflict, that trauma also moves through your own body and mind, and it's a lot to sit with and work through. And so I'm sure Nivedita needs a couple of weeks of rest. I think I need some rest myself, but it just felt very, very worth it. It's like when you climb a mountain, you arrive there exhausted, but you also arrive there exhilarated. And I think I'm feeling like that today at the end of this 2026. Yeah. Thank you so much for showing up and being on our calls, our speakers, our listeners. You've all made this year's Truth and Reconciliation Week just absolutely the best of the best. More to come. Let's keep the conversations going. Namaste. Jai Maan. Shri Gurubhyo Namah.
Thank you
Bye-bye.
so much. Have a great day, everyone.
Thank you, darlings.